which follows on to the next question. I am a revert sister whose parents have been conditioned and contaminated by mainstream Islamophobic with the mainstream Islamophobic mentality and the various media in France. I live in the UK now, and I've been wearing niqab for 2 years. And they do not know this. Am I sinful in doing so behind their backs? I remove it when I go to France, or when I visit, or when they visit me. Of course you have to remove it when you go to France, because it's against the law in France. All right? But the issue is here, this interaction with one's parents who have been contaminated and conditioned and indoctrinated with anti-Islamic sentiment. The whole of society around us now, the various institutions of government, the media, you know, several years ago, and rightfully so, that there was a reaction towards violent extremism of the terrorists, the Khawarij, the Takfiris, the bombings that were taking place across the world. Of course, those bombings and those terrorism acts were taking place in the Muslim lands previous to that for 30 years, from the 1970s. Bombs going off in the Muslim countries, assassinations of Muslim rulers. That was taking place by extreme jihadist groups, and I use the term jihadist in the sense of that they have gone to extreme in the understanding of jihad, just like the Qadariyah are called the Qadariyah because they went to ghulu with regard to their understanding of Qadr, that they negated it from Allah. Right? So when I use the term that they are jihadist organizations, meaning that they have misunderstood jihad, they focus upon jihad with the incorrect understanding. But nevertheless, when these organizations, so-called jihadist, which they call today Islamist organizations, that they were partaking in terrorist attacks and killings and suicides in the Muslim lands, in the Arabian Peninsula, in the Middle East for the last 30 years, the West paid no attention. Rather, London became a refuge for them. Did it not? It became a place where those extremists would come to London and they would find it as a place of refuge, and they would sit here and they would continue. Umar Bakri, Muhammad, the head of Hizb ut-Tahrir in the late 1980s and early 1990s through to the mid-1990s, he was the leader and the Amir of Hizb ut-Tahrir in the UK. And then after that, when they split amongst themselves and they came into 2 groups and then 3, and then they became more splinter groups, because this is the way of Ahlul Bid'ah, they never remain united, they always divide. Then he set up another group, another Takfiri group. And likewise Abu Hamza al-Masri, who now it turns out when he gave evidence in the United States, and all of these Takfiris, he's the one who declared all of the rulers to be unbelievers and all of the Muslim scholars to be unbelievers. Then when he was eventually extradited to the US from the UK, in the court in the UK, what was his defense? He said, I've been working for the security services in the UK since the late 1990s. This is what he confessed to. All right? And likewise, but he was given refuge in the UK, him, Umar Bakri. And likewise, Abu Qatada Filistini, who was wanted in Jordan for terrorist activities in Jordan, where civilians were killed in several bombings in Jordan. But the British government would never extradite him back to Jordan. Rather, he was given a platform. He started writing articles, giving fatwa, making takfir upon the rulers, spreading discord in the Muslim lands while sitting in London. And who were the ones refuting these individuals? Likewise, you had Babar Ahmed. Babar Ahmed, where a 200,000 name petition was sent to Parliament to stop his extradition to the United States. When he went to the United States, he stood in the dock and he said, actually, I'm guilty. So what were those 200,000 signatures for, when actually in the UK you were saying I'm innocent, when now you're standing in the court in the United States, you say that I'm guilty. You took an oath by Allah, because they take an oath in the US courts, just like they do in the British courts, in accordance to your religion. You take an oath by Allah and by the Quran, the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you will speak the truth. What did he say? Yes, I am guilty for inciting terrorist activities in the Caucasus, in other places, and fundraising for the Takfiris. Whilst he was in the UK, he was telling everyone, and those people at Green Lane Mosque, and many of the Ahl Hadith parties in the UK, alongside the Ikhwan and all of these other groups, that they were promoting a petition to protect him from being extradited, because they said he's innocent, because he claimed innocence. So they were defending this Takfiri. But these individuals were given free rein in the 1990s and throughout the 2000s. Whilst the bombs were going off in the Middle East, Muhammad Zain al-Abidin, Muhammad Surur Zain al-Abidin, right, this individual who is the founder of Al-Muntada al-Islami in Fulham, same thing he was doing. He was thrown out of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, then to Kuwait, and then exiled in London, and Birmingham, and then London. These individuals were sowing seeds of discord and terrorism and so on in the Middle East. So it was all right when they were throwing their disease and their illness and their sickness thousands of miles away. But when it became exported from the Middle East, came from the UK and from these European countries, it was exported to the Middle East, but then they found actually, the chickens have come home to roost. Because now these same takfiris, khawarij, shayateen and devils, who are the brothers of the devils because they cause harm and discord and killing of human beings, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, the death of any human being unjustly is forbidden in Islam. Whether they are Muslim, non-Muslim, doesn't matter. Islam forbids unjust killing of civilians and other than them. But these individuals, Muhammad al-Mas'ari, Saad al-Faqihi, all of these individuals were given refuge in the West. Ali Tamimi spread his disease from the West. He was living in Washington, D.C., in Virginia. That's where he was living. And he was making takfir of the Muslim rulers. Right? And he was declaring, those scholars to be misguided. This is Ali Tamimi. But where was he? In the West. And likewise, Anwar al-Awlaki. He's an American. His English is better than yours. Right? Where were these people? These people, many of them, that they were given free license to travel across Europe and the US and Canada to spread their fitna and spread their disease. Right? So this, when it began in those countries and then slowly it returned back because of course, it's like, if you ever did chemistry and you drop some ink from a pipette onto some filter paper. What happens to the ink? Spreads. Right? So they didn't see that if you throw a stone into water, then the ripples will come back. It's a ripple effect. That illness that you sowed, that you allowed to be spread in the Arabic language, these people are giving fatwa. In 1995, from London, these fatwa were issued by Abu Hamza al-Masri and Abu Qatada Filistini. From London, talking about Algeria, that it is permissible to kill the wives and the children of those who work for the government in Algeria. 1995, this is 6 years before 9/11. Over 10 years before 7/7. And yet nothing was done about them. These people were glorifying the assassination of Anwar Sadat in 1982. Glorifying that he has been killed and the one who killed him, he has killed the Pharaoh. And this was being spread in the UK. And in America and in other places. So this reaction towards violent extremism, it only became an issue when it started happening in the West. What, the lives of those Muslims wasn't worth anything? The children being killed and slaughtered wasn't worth anything up until it started happening in the West? Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Baz in 1998. And even the scholars in 1994, 93, 92, after the beginning of the first Gulf War against Iraq, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, the scholars from that time were warning against terrorism. And Sheikh Muqbil was warning against Muhammad Surur. Sheikh Al-Albani was warning against Muhammad Surur and his magazine As-Sunnah, which should be called Al-Bid'ah. But the Salafi scholars, they were awake. They were aware that this is taking place. But they were sleeping here. In fact, even if they knew, they allowed it to be propagated. Umar Bakri, anyone who was in Dawah to Salafiyah in the 1990s, most of Dawah of Umar Bakri was where? In which institutions? Who was around in the 1990s? Where did he used to go? He used to go to the universities. He was given free reign in the lecture theatres of the universities in this country. Muhammad al-Mas'ari used to go around giving lectures in the masajid. Anwar al-Awlaki used to go to universities. Awlaki. This Khariji terrorist. So there was a backlash. When it came to when the bombings began in the West, then they said, whoa, what's been happening? These guys, we gave them refuge and now they're attacking us? Yes. Because you allowed it to fester. You allowed it to fester. You allowed the books of Sayyid Qutb. When the scholars of Salafiyah were warning against the books of Sayyid Qutb, you allowed those books to be spread and be translated into the English language. And organizations such as the Islamic Foundation in Leicester were translating the books of Mawdudi, Jihad fil Islam. A twisted version of what jihad is. and milestones by Sayyid Qutb that were being spread in the English language. And the Salafis were saying, don't allow this disease to spread amongst the youth. Stop this Umar Bakri. Stop Hizb al-Tahrir. Stop Abu Qatada. Stop Abu Hamza. Abu Hamza was traveling around the country. When they removed him from Finsbury Mosque, where was he doing the khutbah? In the street, outside Finsbury Mosque. And who was protecting him? You see a police cordon around him that he has the freedom of speech to give his khutbah. They're protecting him. Now you want to, and then they try to extradite him to the US. But the Salafis, alhamdulillah, from the early 90s and even before that they were aware of this. That's why Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz said in 1998, 3 years before 9/11, about Osama bin Laden. He said, Osama bin Laden and those with him, they do not believe in Allah and the last day. He said, I hold that they do not believe in Allah and the last day. These people who would carry out these acts and glorify these acts that happened in where was it? In Tanzania, right? Or Tanzania and Kenya. The hotel bombings in 97 and 98. He said those who carried out these bombings in those countries. Why? Because it's still thousands of miles away from the West. Who spoke out? Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz. And the scholars of Salafiyyah spoke out against it. And they said these are from the acts of the Khawarij. Bin Laden said, he said, Alhamdulillah, this is a lifting of the humiliation of the Ummah. We're going to see more of this in Riyadh, in other places. Sheikh bin Baz said, what? This man does not believe in Allah on the last day that he would make such comments. Him and Muhammad al-Mas'ari and Saad al-Faqihi, he named them Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz, rahimahullah. Named them by name. So the West, when this started happening, of course, people are going to get scared. These Muslims are coming to kill us. Look at bin Laden, big beard, wearing the robes of Islam, a turban upon his head, like the imam upon his head. Of course, the non-Muslims looking at this, subhanAllah, they're going to kill us. Look, they're coming, they're bringing that now here to us. Right, so this is where it began. And then the media, it began its energetic attack upon Islam as a whole. Oh, these Muslims, they're not into homosexuality. What's that got to do with violent terrorism? What's that got to do with that? They don't like them. Just because I don't engage in that behavior, what? What does that mean now? People are going to start killing everyone? No. It doesn't mean that. We live in a society where these types of things take place. Right? We're not going to be violent towards them. We're going to give them da'wah. Because these types of ideas, the thing is, what the media did and what the various authorities and governments they did, that they thought, they saw Orthodox Islam and they equated it to extreme, violent, jihadist Islam. They equated the two. They said that orthodoxy equals extremism, and it doesn't. Orthodoxy actually tempers extremism. It rebuts it, because what is orthodoxy? To be orthodox in something means that you return back to the purest way. And orthodoxy in Islam returns back to the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. That's what it returns back to. That's Orthodox Islam. So Orthodox Islam, if it is stringent upon that, which is what orthodoxy means, to be stringent and firm upon the principles of Islam as it was in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. So therefore, Orthodox Islam will oppose and combat anything that comes in its path that violates that purity. And from the greatest of violations of Orthodox Islam and the purity of Islam is the disease of the Khawarij. So there was a group within the United Kingdom and Europe that recognized this. And you know what they said? When they started writing their academic research, they said, if you want to combat violent extremism, you have to go to the Salafis because they are orthodox, because they don't allow pollution. And they will combat it, not by throwing a basketball at them and teaching them to play football five-a-side every weekend. Because that was an idea that they threw out there. Oh, these Muslims, because they have nothing to do. So let's, give them a basketball and give them a table tennis table and let them play table tennis. And they realized, actually, that's not working. Because to combat this violent extremism, you need a theological approach. You need to combat them on a theological level, on the level of Quran, Hadith, orthodoxy, Sahaba, what the Prophet said. And there was a whole body throughout Europe that realized that when we look at Saudi Arabia has the best record of combating violent extremism. It is not the founder, it is not the basis, it is not the base of it. Rather, it is the base of combating it. And that's why Saudi Arabia is the most stable country in the Middle East. It is the most stable country. In fact, it's more stable than many Western countries. Where did that stability come from? From a theological approach to lifestyle. That looking at life and looking at the lives of the people and approaching it from a religious perspective. Because these people want religion. Because they are Muslims. So let's teach them the correct orthodox religion. An orthodox religion that combats and opposes terrorism, opposes violent extremism and so on. So when they looked at Saudi Arabia and they saw that actually there are people who have been affected by the ideas of bin Laden. There have been people who have been affected by the ideas of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But Saudi Arabia, what approach did it take? He said, right, let's engage with them. Let's bring the scholars to them. Let's bring the evidences to them. Bring the narrations to them. Bring the prophetic tradition to them. Bring the historical approach of how the scholars of the past and the companions and the disciples of Muhammad dealt with violent extremism. And Saudi Arabia became a model. Europe saw that, and academics in Europe saw that, and they advised the government. And for a while, Salafiyya was used as an approach to combat extremism. But when the media got involved and it became a free-for-all, and the rabble got involved, then Islam as a whole became an enemy. So now a person who has a beard, there's no place for your beards in our country. Niqab, no place for your niqab in our country. Hijab, no hijab. Why? Because the mentality that they had, there's a mentality that is anti-Islamic. That all forms and all manifestations of Islam are a conveyor belt to extremism. And all the research that they have done, academics have done, proves the opposite. That actually Orthodox Islam is a conveyor belt away from extremism, not towards extremism. Because most people who are engaged in extremist, violent, radical activities, most of them are young and uneducated. Look at those ones in France. Drug dealers 3 months ago. Right? Cavorting with prostitutes a year ago. Common criminals who have done prison sentences less than 2 years ago. Where is their foundation of Islam? In fact, it shows and it proves those ones that partook in the 7/7 bombings in London, uneducated, never studied Islam, never studied any of the books of Orthodox Islam. So in fact, it shows and it proves that Orthodox Islam, because of its focus upon knowledge and education and action, it's a conveyor belt away from radicalization and away from extremism and violent extremism of the likes of ISIS. And Saudi Arabia is a point in case where it has worked. They adopted the model. The model worked. Why? Because it is an ancient model. Ilm and amal. And following the path of the early generations. Knowledge and action protects from extremism. So these, your parents, and our, many of our societies where we have converts to Islam from France, from Germany, from Belgium, from Britain and elsewhere, that yes, it is a challenge, but you have to be articulate and intelligent in the manner that you convey this da'wah to your parents. And you explain to them, Orthodox Islam is a protection from misguidance. Orthodox Islam, from all types of misguidance, from the misguidance of the Shia, who are also terrorists in Yemen. You see their terrorist activities, the Houthiyyin in Yemen. And also the activities of the Khawarij, such as Nusra and ISIS, and all of the offspring of Al-Qaeda, which have been divided into several sects in Iraq and Syria. That the opposition to this comes from the direction of Orthodox Salafi Islam. That is the combat tool. You want to fight them? You want to oppose them? That is the way. We have to get this information across to our parents and to the non-Muslims around us. As for the issue of niqab, no, you don't have to wear the niqab. The niqab is not wajib in accordance to the most correct opinion of the scholars. That is the position of the jumhur of Ahlul Ilm from the Salaf of this ummah. It is the position of the four madhabs and the ulama that came before them and the ulama that came after them. And the hadith of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That is the most correct position. But however, there are other opinions from them, Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, Sheikh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen, who say that it is wajib, the niqab for the woman. But nevertheless, the most correct opinion, as has been propounded by Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah in this time, is that the covering the face veil, it is not obligatory. Due to the hadith of Asma bint Abi Bakr, which is without doubt authentic. And there is nothing abrogating it, because there is no proof for abrogation. And there is no proof that it is a weak hadith. The hadith of Asma bint Abi Bakr, when the Prophet ﷺ said to her, nothing of you should be seen except for this and this. And he pointed towards his face and his hands. And there are numerous other hadith that prove that. So the issue of the niqab is not an issue. Right? There's no need to become, overexcited about the issue of the niqab. They're banning the niqab. Yes, it is an issue in the sense that they are preventing the freedom of the practice of people who want to wear the niqab. Because in a society which they have adopted these principles of freedom, and freedom to speak, and freedom to do this, and freedom to have sex with anything that moves, right? That they have adopted these principles of freedom, that you can do this, that you can violate, one man can violate, the rear of another man. They have set up these principles. Yes, okay, these are your principles. So what about the principle that I have the freedom to wear the niqab? My wife has the freedom to wear the niqab. Why do you violate her rights? Because that doesn't harm anyone if she wears the niqab. What harm is she doing? She's not hurting anyone. She's not damaging anyone. This is her right. It doesn't mean that she's unintelligent. Don't tell her that she's oppressed. She may have a degree. She may have a master's. She may have a PhD. She may be more articulate. Her English, her Arabic. She may speak several languages. How dare you accuse her of being oppressed? And when you ask, you say, no, this is a freedom of choice. I chose this. I chose, no, you don't understand. You've been indoctrinated. You don't even know that you're indoctrinated. Because that's the new call. Right? They remove your freedom on the basis that we are protecting you. I want to wear the niqab. No, you can't wear the niqab. You are oppressed. You don't know that you're oppressed. So we're now going to remove your oppression. Kaif? She's not harming herself. She's not harming anyone else. But anyway, the issue of fiqh of the niqab, the issue of the ability and the the mustahab nature of the niqab. Because the sunnah, the wearing of niqab is mustahab. It is recommended. And it is rewardable to wear it. So why should they stop the niqab? Whilst they allow all other types of things. People walking around drunk, inebriated, due to the fact that they've been drinking alcohol and they vomit on the streets. And how much research shows how harmful that these narcotics and the worst of the narcotics and the intoxicants that they take is alcohol. Yet it is freely available. And they have these legal highs. That now you find 14, 15-year-old children becoming high and jumping off buildings. Right? Because they become so intoxicated they don't know what's happening around them. Committing suicide and so on. So how does the niqab and things like this harm you? But the Salafi, and this is the broader point of this question, that the Salafi needs to be aware and acquainted with the means of giving da'wah. That you don't sit back and you just hide yourself and you become scared. No, be straight. Study your deen. Learn your deen. And teach them. Read the books, read the words of the scholars, read what Bin Baz said, read what Al-Albani said, read what Sheikh Ubaid says, read what Fawzan says, and convey. Alright, there's no harm in talking to non-Muslims. My mother is a non-Muslim, should I talk to her? What are you talking about? She gave birth to you. What do you mean, should I talk? Of course talk to her. Should I be nice to her? Of course be nice to her. Asma bint Abi Bakr said to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, my mother is a staunch mushrika. She's staunch against Islam. And she's staunch upon idolatry. And she wants to visit me. Should I host her? He said, yes, host her. Why? Because she's your mother. She's your mother. Muslim or kafira, she's your mother. Show her goodness. Be kind to her. Be generous to her. Be nice to her. Buy her gifts. Show her how Islam has improved you. How it has bettered you. Bettered your wife. Bettered your children. Bettered you as a man. A man now, before he became a Muslim, he used to pay no attention. Now he buys her shopping without her asking. Takes her to the hospital, makes appointments for her. Takes care of her needs. She said, I don't know what religion you've started, but it is good, whatever it is. Whatever you're doing, it is good. How many brothers have said that to me? How many sisters have mentioned that? Just by your good behavior, they said, you know what? This boy used to come in at 3 o'clock in the morning. He used to sleep till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then he used to leave the house. Never used to even talk to us. We used to be lying sick out of influenza or some other illness. And he never used to pay attention. But he adopted this religion of these Arabs. And now, he wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And we hear him in the bathroom, washing himself. And then praying. Then he makes us breakfast and brings tea to our bed. Whilst we're still, waking up. He brings money and he puts £50 or 50 euros into our hands every week. And he says, mother, when's your next appointment at the dentist or the doctor? And he takes me there. I don't know this deen, but whatever it is, it's good. In America, you find this common amongst the non-Muslims that they say, he became Muslim. That Islam is good. Your a'mal are a tazkiyah for you. Barakallahu feekum. Wa jazakumullahu khairan.